This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and it's my pleasure to be speaking with Leslie Bibb about The White Lotus. How are you, Leslie?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We spoke about a year ago for Palm
I
Royale,
remember.
and you were, I think, excited about this show, but I feel like Palm Royale, did well. It's popular, that's one thing, but this is like a whole new level. Were you prepared for what that was going to be like?
No, I don't think anybody can be prepared for. I don't think you. I did not. I mean, I knew it was a popular show. I mean, obviously, I love White Lotus. I watch White Lotus, but I think there is a passion that people who watch the show have that is like nothing I've ever witnessed before. And also, I don't know if it's because it only comes out once a week. I don't know if it's also because Mike writes, his writing is so smart and complex, and he never dumbs down his writing. Like, you'll hear notes from like studios and they're like, well, they're not going to get it. Let's make sure to repeat this so that, and he's like, no, they'll get it. We don't have to say the character's name exactly again. Like, they'll remember who it is. And I think he does this thing for audiences where like the audiences are smart, they get it, they're invested, they're not scared of the edges that Mike is playing with, and they want it and they want more. And so I think because of that, people really appreciate it, and they are super invested in the story, and they pick up everything. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Yes, people stop me on the street, but it was as much to not ask me for spoilers, because it's like they don't want to know spoilers, because they'll go, don't tell me who dies, and I'm like, I can't, but okay. But they'll also say like they just want to share their theories, so there's a passion that they all have, which I find so incredible.
When you're talking about, not spelling things out for audiences, it's interesting to me because I feel like Kate, in her relationship with her friends, is trying to be not necessarily vague, but to not bring up subjects that she thinks will be uncomfortable, but then get asked very point blank, you didn't vote for Trump, did you? And I think that, to me, was an interesting switch for the show because I feel like there's a lot of social critique, a lot of things about what people may or may not be thinking, how we're supposed to relate to them and not. And that's like a very direct correlation to real life right now that just sort of changed the course in a lot of ways for me.
Isn't it? It's so interesting how that became such a important scene. I mean, Mike is, God, he's so smart. I mean, his writing and the way that, like, I also think what's so fascinating in that scene and so many scenes, there's like what's being said, and then there's like what's not being said. And what's not being said is what's being really said. That's what's really being pushed. And it's funny because like that was my audition scene. And I remember thinking, this is a very exciting scene. And I knew how important this scene was, because I know that everybody's having this conversation, not just within politics, but within any issue that is happening. It's like down to like, do you have an electric car or do you not have an electric car? Like everything's become so polarized. There's no center, there's no meeting in the aisle. There's no center aisle. It's black or white, in or out. Like it's very dramatic, everybody's responses. But at the same time, Mike being brave enough to say, I'm going to broach this subject. And it felt like people were like, oh, thank you. Because I know what that's like. I know what it's like to maybe have a different political view than, say, my family has, or my partner has, or this, but like, do I throw that baby out with the bathwater? Can I still love this person if they share some ideology that's slightly different than mine? But so I knew it was like a fun, juicy scene when I did the audition. But something I think started to inform that scene for me in a deeper level, and it happened in the moment when we were filming. So in the script, it was always that all three girls were besotted by Valentine. Like besotted, like he was so cute. It was like, oh, we've got this like butler, and then we were filming that scene. It was the first scene we were shooting. And I was like on my little perch, like a little bird watching them. Because I mean, Kate sort of, she's like a mirror for them. Like if one of them has a thought and she's with them, then she might morph into that thought. She's so scared to be left behind. Like I know it's a triangle of friends, but to me, I always played it like sisters, that she felt like the baby sister, desperate for their approval, desperate to fit in, and sort of idolized both of them. And it's in the script that like they both were like dancers and cheerleaders, and I played softball. Like she's just always sort of left of center with them, of the trifecta. And so I was on my perch, and we're filming, actually, I think, Jacqueline and Lori's coverage. And Jacqueline starts talking about Valentine. And then Lori's responding, and I'm listening, watching them. And something happened. I remember it so clear, that this feeling came up in the scene, not Leslie, but Kate, like came up, because I'm in the scene listening, and we're, listening to them, watching them. And this jealousy came up. And I remember I had this thought, like, he's going to ruin our vacation. He's going to ruin our vacation. And then they yelled cut, and I went back, and I was like, such an interesting reaction that happened. And then I thought, oh, that's important. So that then every time he came around, I always am annoyed by him. I just would be like, I stopped. I had never played the moment of like, ooh, I was like, oh, hi, Valentine. Or just because he is ruining. It's like he's going to bring his dumb friends back to our villa. And it became so important for me. This trip is so important. I don't want distractions. And I know how competitive those two get around men and around boys. And like, so that then that little nugget of it, like morsel, when I thought about the scene at the dinner table, I was like, oh, this is as much about me trying to stand in her power and say that I go to church now. And yeah, no, I really like it. I really like it. I'm being truthful. She's being authentic. She's risking that, because I know they're both going to judge me. But when we started talking about politics, that reaction felt to me as much about I don't want to ruin the vacation. So how do I do this like the great hostess with the smile and try to be funny? And it felt more like a fear response, and the desperation it is for Kate, because this vacation and these friendships are important to me. And I love them regardless of the way they live their lives. So it's how I want them to see me. So it felt more complex than just this sort of black and white thing. And, Mike, because he writes characters that seemingly seem in a square, black and white, with him, his writing is all about the edges and edging everybody up and out and pushing out. And either you get on board with that or you don't. And because of that, it allows you to take a character that seemingly seems like could be in a box and really look at her edges and look at that complexity for her. So I found it really invigorating and exhilarating and inspiring to really push it with Kate and look for things all the time of like, because Mike, we had this conversation early on, and he said two things to me when we were having our meeting. He made me do an Enneagram test, which is this like personality test. And he said, I know you're a perfectionist. I was like, I'm not a perfectionist. She was like, yes, you are, because you're just like Kate. You're a perfectionist like Kate. And he was like, you're like an 843. And I was like, I don't know what an 843 is, but I'm not an 843. And then I was in an 843. And I was like, oh, dang it, I'm an 843. And then he was like, Kate is a perfectionist. And then he said, Kate's arc is slight, but if we do our job correctly, it will be very impactful. And that's daunting to hear, because it means it's more complicated. And so it became very important to me to really look at like the importance of her listening, because I feel like with Kate, she's saying a lot sometimes when she's not opening her mouth. And it and her listening had to be so important. So I think that's what happens in that dinner table scene. Like she goes, "What you didn't vote for Trump, did you?" And what I hear, and watching her, and watching, knowing what that reaction is, watching Jacqueline. So Mike really helped me in that beginning to sort of set the stakes and set the bar for how deeply I sort of had to work for Kate. And I think I did it. I think because people come up and they'll say, God, the way you listen and your eyes and the way that you are absorbing, you're always watching them, and it's so funny, or it's so this, or it's so heartbreaking, or it's this. And so I'm like, okay, then we did it. And Mike said to me, he said, we did it. We did our job. We did it, Leslie. We did it. So to get that from Mike, and I was like, but does it, he's like, it's real. It's so real. It's really, it's beautiful. It's, you know, so that's like the greatest compliment you can get from Mike, because all he wants is for you to feel real. And, you know, and he was like, he said, Kate feels so deep and real. So that's, I mean, what more can I ask for?
I also noticed in our conversation last time that you said that you love when you get a chance to work with your partner, Sam. And I know
It
that in
doesn't
this
happen.
case,
I mean,
that's what I was
honestly,
gonna say. It doesn't count, right? This, you
yeah,
didn't actually work with them.
I mean, I really, if I'm being honest, we really haven't ever really worked together. We've been like, like in the same atmosphere, like on Iron Man 2, and then on the Jared Hess movie. But really, I was with Danny McBride, who I love. I'm such a fan of Danny's. I'm so glad. It's the reason I did the movie. But I know everyone's like, you got to work. I was like, I didn't work with Sam. We didn't even get to spend that much time. He got cast so late in the game that like by the time he got to Bangkok, I had to leave to go to LA to get my hair cut and colored to keep the Kate bob. And then I came back, and he only really shot 4 days for his whole stuff. And then I had to finish up doing a scene with Michelle. And then then we were done. But we got to be in Bangkok together, which is nice. And I have to say, when I read, I got the audition, then I got cast, and then I got all 8 episodes. And I remember when I read it, Frank's monologue was so impactful for me. I was like, oh, this is what this show is. And that monologue, I was like, Mike White should win the Emmy just for this monologue. This monologue is so incredible, because if you want to be just a surface person, you can be like, oh, he's talking about sex. It's like, it's not what they're talking about. He's taking, and the whole 3rd season is it's a very hard season, because you're talking about spirituality. So the whole season revolves around, which is a very difficult field to sort of approach in a digestible way for a television show, right? So you're like, okay. And I remember reading this monologue, and I said to Sam, I was like, I don't know who they're getting for this part, but it is the best. And I was like, this deserves an Emmy. This monologue. Mike deserves one for writing it, and whoever plays it should win the Emmy. And I feel like that monologue is what the whole show is about, because that character, Frank, and the way Sammy played it so honestly and so truthfully, it's a masterclass in acting. But I remember thinking, oh, this is what nobody in the show is risking. None of the 3 ladies show up and tell their truth and risk that vulnerability. Jason Isaacs' character doesn't risk that. Victoria's not risking that. The kids are not risking that. Nobody is really living their truth. And then like, even like if you look at like Piper thinks she knows what her truth is, and then not till the end is she's like, no, I just want to be a rich girl and I don't want to live in something. I think I want to be that person. We're all like this idea of like spirit versus form. And who I am on the outside, is that who I am on the inside? And am I a reflection of you? Is that who I am? And so like I just remember thinking that that monologue really impacted me for even Kate, because I was like, she never risks that. She's not pure. And it started to, I started to look at like Kate's curiosity or her lack thereof. And why isn't she curious? Why is it? And, you know, and I made a choice that at every meal, I only eat chicken and rice, or at breakfast, I only eat fruit that has a rind on it, because I think she's one of those people that goes on a vacation and is like, is this bottled water? Can I have bottled water? You know, never eating, never like experiencing anything, but then we'll go home and be like, yeah, I went to Thailand, or I went on safari in Africa, you know, and it's like this idea of this presentational life lived versus a true life lived. And like, and it really, like the way I dressed, I was like, okay, she shows up her true self and she leaves her true self. But this girl gets a whole new wardrobe, because when she's in Thailand, she's going to be somebody she can't really be in Texas. So all my clothes are really deep V'd and very kind of zhuzh and out there. That's not who Kate is, you know? Somebody asked me something. They said, do you think, is Kate gonna, what's Kate gonna think about the trip at the end of it? And I was like, she's not gonna tell anybody died. She's gonna go home and say, I had the time of my life. We are more connected than ever. They're my best friends. I'm gonna go to Malibu. She's married to like Austin Butler, and I'm gonna, you know, like, so yeah, it that monologue for Frank really, and really dialed something in for me about the entire journey for my character of Kate, and like, and the playing field with which working on the White Lotus and working with someone like Mike White, like, because everything's so nuanced. And by the way, the audience gets it all. Like, I made this choice to wear like switch. The day we were filming the scene by the pool, I asked the costume designer, like, what am I wearing? She's like, oh, your dress from the club. And I was like, no, I want to wear pajamas. And she was like, no, but you're coming. And I was like, no. She went into her bedroom. She changed into pajamas, because nothing says get the fuck out of my house, like after inviting people over, than putting, like, it's felt passive aggressive, you know? And like, so I just feel like everything with, you know, Mike embraces everything, all the subtlety.
But it was such a positive experience.
Yeah.
What's the
Sorry,
latest with?
just like yammering.
No, it's wonderful. I think it's so interesting to hear, because I think there is, again, there people are so obsessed with the show and there's so much to talk about.
I
But I'm
just
curious,
love it. I just love it. I loved Kate. I loved having somebody that seems so sort of like you could put her, you know, where you think you know where she goes, and then working on trying to find her edges and her complexity, because she is a Mike White character, so she has that, and it's come from Mike, so there is darkness, and there is all of this complexity and edges that you have to play in. And I love when people come up to me and they go, I want to hate Kate, but somehow she's my favorite character, or like, God, why do I feel like I'm a Kate? And I was like, so I feel like it's 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 cool. I love it. I mean, it's all a testament to Mike, because it's everything that he writes and everything that he decides, you know, to put up on the, you know, you give him everything, and then he takes it all, and that's what's really fun. He never leaves anything. I mean, he sees everything. He sees every look you give and every subtle nuance he catches, which is incredible.
I know Mike's not involved, but what's the latest with Palm Royale season two?
It's gonna be, I don't know. I keep hearing our producers were texting me and they were saying that it looks really fun. I've seen some of it and I really am excited because I think Abe Sylvia and the producers, Laura Dern and Jamie Lemons and Kristen Wiig, really decided on a lane that we're gonna be in. And I think the lane is really fun and big and bold and funny, and the costumes and the makeup are incredible and the hair and the wigs are all incredible, but it's campy and fun and delicious, and I think it will be just what we need come November. I think it comes out in November, so I think it will be exactly the winter treat that we need. And we have these amazing people who show up and do guest stars and come on, and it's going to be awesome. It was really fun this year.
I'm so glad. Well, our site is still pretty new, so it's rare that I guess to get to talk to someone, a year apart and ask the same question again, which is, what are you watching? What have you seen lately on TV that you really like?
You know what? I just went to the Gotham Awards because we gave Parker, my partner and I, Sammy and I gave Parker an award. She asked us to present her with an award, which was so cool and so sweet that she wanted us to do it. And I got to meet Stephen Graham, who did Adolescence. And as you know, I'm a very exuberant person when I am passionate about something. So I got to fully geek out on Stephen and that show. And that show just blew my socks off. I mean, maybe because the complexity of it, broaching subjects that I think that people don't want to talk about, and what it means to be a parent. I mean, I don't have kids, so, but it accessed the fear of what I imagine it would be if I had a kid, like how hard it is to be a parent and the pressure it is to be a parent and how hard you try to do it differently than your parents. And it's the hardest job out there is to be a parent, I think. And I just thought they nailed that series. And I love that it was only 4 episodes. It's really hard to make great television. Like, when people get judgy and you're like, it's just not so great. And it's like, they're 22 episodes. You're shooting for magic for 22. Then it goes down to 13. That's hard. 10 is hard. In 10, you're going to have a couple that are like, your writer's room is like, but like, I think it's like the reason Mike's are great is because Mike writes all of them and he directs all of them. And I think sometimes, it's real past 8 episodes, it's really hard to make great it's really hard to give you what you deserve, because being a writer is really hard, and the complexity and tying stories together and mapping it all out and having it all make sense, it's really hard. So I was always really, I got to sort of, emphatically talk about how I love that it was only 4 episodes. I love that there were just episodes that, I think it's like the 3rd episode when it's just the kid and the young woman who's the social worker. Incredible. And the woman who played the mother, and he was talking about her. She was so awesome, and how he fought for her and he's, I think, known her since drama school. And then I was like, and who deserves some love? The girl who played the sister, because it's not the flashier role, and that's what everyone sort of goes like. But that girl in that last episode, when she comes up and she was like, it's always hard for me at school. Like the complexity of all of it, and how honest it was and how it opened. And I could talk about that show. I just, Adolescence to me is the best, like, limited series. Like, that should win, get all the flowers. And I just think it's for a limited series, it should really do that. And then I think Sam Rockwell should win best actor. I mean, that monologue, I'm gonna kill somebody. I mean, I'm not gonna kill you, but I might punch you in your nose if you don't. But I think Sammy deserves, that monologue is fucking amazing. And then Mike White, I mean, he's doing like really big things, right? Don't you think?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I so appreciate your passion, and I know that with Palm Royale coming back, we'll have a chance to talk again soon. Thank
Yay!
you.
Abe,
And
thank
I
you so much.